Hey everyone, Bryan Baylon here, and thank you so much for joining us. This is your real estate sort of update for today. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel for more updates. Trying to do a lot more videos once per day now, streaming live, so you can get the latest on what's going on in real estate in the greater Phoenix area, Maricopa County. I'm going to get right into it. Today's topic is income property. Owners and options if you're a landlord, what you have before you with all the coronavirus and CARES Act and that kind of stuff. I have addressed tenants, rental situations, deferring rents, but now we're going to talk about the other side of it, the landlords, and what are some of your options that you have as rent is now through the CARES Act and even through local executive orders are now being renters, and even those who are homeowners are able to defer their payments for up to 120 days. So here's the thing: if you are not receiving rent from your tenants, let's say you get a call from one of your tenants, and they had just lost their job due to COVID-19. You do have a couple options. So if they're saying that they want to stay in there, but they have actually been affected by COVID-19 and they've been laid off, for instance, or if they have gotten sick from COVID-19 or have been affected in any way, then you are not able to evict them. And that's what protects them under the CARES Act. It protects them under the executive order. However, if they are not affected, so if they they still have their job and they're working their normal hours and they are not paying their rent, then those are still terms that you can evict. So this is not a complete ban on all evictions. It's just for specific situations, specifically for those who have been affected in any way by the COVID-19, but really more specifically due to the stay-at-home orders. So with that said, let's say, for instance, that you have someone that has been affected by COVID-19, have the conversation. So what I would recommend for you to do if you're a landlord is, this video is coming out now, May 7th, but be proactive, right? If you have, call your tenants and find out what's going on, what are the situations. If you don't already have that information, right? By now you probably should. You may have already thought about that, but call your tenants and have that conversation. If they're still making rent and it seems like nothing's wrong and you've had them for over a year or two or long term, still contact them and find out, hey, how are you doing? How are things going? And just get a pulse about where they're at. And that's also good just to check in and establish that connection, that care piece there, that, just finding out how their family's doing, their work situation, and just seeing how they're doing overall. And you can bring it up this way. You can bring it up as, hey, with everything going on, and I know, a lot of people right now are losing their jobs, unable to pay rent or their mortgages. How's that going with you on your end? And then it starts the conversation, and you can find out the information from there about where they're at, and it'll help tremendously. So what I've heard from some landlords, what they'll do is they'll actually agree. The tenants will agree to move out, and they'll just relocate, and they'll say something like, you know what, I've been trying to move to the other side of town anyway, and they work now on the other side of town, and they're going to go get a new place there, and it works out. So it doesn't always have to end in evictions. It doesn't always have to end in some tragic way, or it's this unamicable way. It could be fine, but just having that discussion is going to present those opportunities. So also, if you're going to restructure, so let's say, for instance, they decide, well, they're affected by the stay-at-home orders, they lost their job, they do need some time to get a new job and recoup their finances, then what you can do is you can give them a payment plan. So it doesn't mean you have to defer for the full 120 days. You can do a payment plan and have that discussion. I know I do have a friend who's currently going through that with their apartments. They are basically restructured to, instead of May, or let's say it was April, was when the payment plan was made. It was April 2nd and then April 16th. So it was a 2-week payment plan for the full amount of April's rent. But you can make your own terms, right? Because you're the landlord for the restructuring. And but here's the thing about that: when you do this kind of promise to pay, contract or modifying your lease agreement, you have to have the right documents, and it has to be worded in a very specific way in order for you to be protected. Because if, for instance, this could happen, is if you take even $1, right, from, let's say, for instance, your paperwork isn't drafted up correctly, your contracts, and you take even $1, then that, in a sense, can be the acceptance for that month, and then they can defer it again for next month. So to prevent that loophole, you definitely want to have the right contracts in place. If you need or have questions about that, just feel free to let me know, comment. So make sure you have the right documents. Make sure you have the contract and the agreement in place in writing. It's very, very key to have it in writing. Another thing too is, as you're looking, let's say, for instance, you're in the market for income properties. You buy one a year anyway, maybe two a year, and the market has shifted a little bit. What's coming up now, especially for homeowners, is they want post-possession. And if you're not familiar with that, post-possession is basically where a seller, let's say I'm the buyer, I'm buying a house from a seller, and I purchased a home, but the seller still wants to live in the property and rent it for a time until they move on, or they just want to rent it. They don't want to be a homeowner anymore. In this market, sometimes as an income property investor, what you'll find is sometimes you'll have people that want to do that because they want to sell their house first. They want and need the proceeds in order to buy their next house, but they want to sell it first and then start cleaning and go for the next home. So they'll rent from you for a little bit instead of having to go to an apartment or do something else, move into someone else's place. They can keep their place, pay your rents, pay your mortgage basically through your rental income until they find their place. Now, here's the thing is that they're even offering, sometimes we'll see out there in the Phoenix market, they're offering $5,000 for post-possession. So the seller is not only going to sell their property, but they're also providing $5,000. Sometimes refundable, sometimes non-refundable. But here's the thing, if you as a buyer, now you're the investor, one thing you really need to consider is that worth it to you? Because the worst thing, maybe not the worst thing, but one of the issues is not just that tenant not paying, because it's possible, right? They could lose their job. Something could happen where they couldn't pay, but it's also risk, right? They could stay in the property longer than you want, and then what are the terms for that? So you definitely want to have that dialed in and very clear in paper. Also, there could be more risk to wear and tear, use, and damage, which is another headache, right? So then there's repair costs and things like that. Also, there's eviction costs and time. So you can't just evict somebody in one day. There's a minimum 30-day notice, and there's an eviction process that can take some time. And so, judgments could be involved, courts could be involved, police could be involved, and it could just. And plus, now that person, that tenant now is in your home while this process is going on, which could expose you to those damages, etc. So, is $5,000 enough? Like, it seems like a good incentive. You'll have to determine that for you. I would suggest that you request more if you're going to even consider post-possession. I know for me, I've had people ask about that, and I don't even go there, right? I just say no post-possession at all. They've got to be out. And what I do as a solution is I just recommend a simultaneous close. So instead of selling first and then starting the process of buying, that they would sell their house contingent upon, or they would buy a house on the contingent upon the sale of their home. And so then at the same day, their house sells, and they buy the new one, and it closes, so they can move out and move into the new house in the same day. Simultaneous closes. It's definitely possible, and it's really not hard. And it's easier for sure. It's easier for sure in the sellers markets because it's 80, 82, 83% chance of close once it gets under contract. And in the recent sellers market, of course, that's changing now. In the buyer's market, it's a little more difficult. So, but right now we're still, even in Phoenix, 350K and under, we're still in a seller's market. So if that's what your income properties are, if you're looking at entry-level home income properties, then yeah, it should be fine for those kind of situations. But you may choose to do post-possession. That's fine too. Also, one other thing I'll share is that iBuyers. So iBuyers it was a term coined several years ago with the advent of these big companies that basically are like investors that, in hedge funds or, billion-dollar companies that come and buy homes for cash and then do a very, very light remodel and then turn around and sell it again. So a couple ones are like Open Door, OfferPad, and things like that. But those are the two major ones in Phoenix, and basically they've ceased operations once the stay-at-home orders came up. They ceased operations and it was done. And it seemed like they were going to exit the state in a sense, or exit the business, because those companies are typically only successful during sellers markets. In buyers markets, the margins just aren't there and it's not profitable. So they'll have to switch their position to possibly doing traditional real estate or something. But they ceased their operations in like mid to late March, and now they're back. As of tomorrow, at least Open Door is going to come back into the game. So does that mean for you, now your competition is back in terms of investors, right? They are a large investor. They're doing about 4 to 5% of the transactions in a given year in terms of total sales. So they definitely take a large market share combined between the companies. So that's going to take something out of you. So that's why, in one sense, we still don't know, by the way. We still don't know if, how things are going to pan out. And if there's another stay-at-home order, they can cease operations again. And the question then becomes, how long can they float that? They have come up with a new program it's basically where they're partnering with, when they buy someone's house, they're going to buy it, remodel it, sell it, and basically give you a percentage of the proceeds that come from it. The only thing is they're buying it at 90. Well, they assess the market value of the home, and then they give you 90% of that and then charge you a 12% service fee. So whether you're going to make money on that or if that's really beneficial to you is something that you'll have to do the hard numbers on. But I mean, they're coming out with unique programs like that if you need to sell your house quickly. It's a service out there in this market. If you have anything that they're targeting, because they're really targeting anything 500 and under, more ideally, you pretty much don't. I mean, your house will pretty much still sell if it's priced correctly. So it's not necessarily needed. But if you're looking for a purchase, in terms of an income property, just know that they're out there and that program is out there, and that you can easily speak to that and compete with that. Because even if you offer 90%, right, and then you're not giving a 12% service fee, you're still going to compete quite well with them. So it is, I will say, in Maricopa County, the rental market is still very strong. And the biggest reason why that is just population. I imagine, and I haven't seen the numbers yet, but population has significantly reduced since last year or even the beginning of this year in terms of move-ins, just because of the lockdown orders in certain states. And, people had plans to move here and they're not. So definitely in the past 2 months, that has changed. And the trajectory is nowhere near where it could have been. But what if, as things are opening up, because that's what we're seeing, and normalize again, we could see some more movement. Population start coming up again, and people are going to need houses. Population is the number one factor for the demand of real estate. The more people there are here, the more that we need housing. So anyway, I hope that helps you. And if you have any questions, as I put in the chat, feel free to comment, because this video is about to end. And please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for your support, and we will catch you next video.